Hello everybody. I've been interested in photography for some time now, and yet there is always something that has deeply annoyed me. You go for a walk, you might take 300 pictures. If you're like me, not very good or extremely critical, you might keep what? 10? And on these 10, you're going to upload them to your computer, into your editing software. You start editing and it will not take you that long. It's like about 10 minutes. But 10 minutes per photo and you start spending hours on it. And it's a laborious process, which personally bores me. That's why I recently had the idea to buy my first Fuji camera, the Fuji X-S10. Why would I turn to this brand? It's for what they call film simulation, which are different shooting options that will allow the user to replicate different types of photographic film simulation. These are whole image processing algorithm built into the camera that will allow me to avoid to post-process my photo. Of course, you can create your own presets that you want to import into your camera, and if you don't have a Fuji, you can, depending on your camera, have a similar setting. But maybe let's have a look at that in another video. Now that I have received the camera, I just need to buy a lens. I don't need a zoom or a wide-angle lens for my use of this camera. I would rather have a focal lens that corresponds to something around the human eyes, so I'm looking for something closer to 50mm. And as my camera is an APS-C, to keep it simple, an APS-C is a sensor format that is smaller than a full frame and with a lower magnification ratio for that lens. This means that in my case, to get something close to the 50mm, instead of taking the 50 lens, as it will be the case on a full format, I will take the 35. And I choose a FUJINON 35mm aperture 1.4. Again, to keep it really simple, the aperture is the opening of the diaphragm inside the lens, and therefore the amount of light that enters the camera body is measured in f value. And be careful, there is a trap. The bigger the number next to the f value is, like for example 10, and the less light you will have. So here with a 1.4 lens, there is a very large amount of light that will reach the camera. And that's it. We have all our gear and we get dressed for the -15, so let's get outside. The picture I'm going to show you didn't have any editing or crop. Keep in mind that I'm not a professional, so this video is mainly aimed to a beginner audience. That's why I can advise you to take pictures in automatic. There is nothing to worry about, but the more you get to know your camera and the function of your camera, the more you will be able to take exactly the picture you had in mind. I'm putting this one just to test my camera. I took a snow close-up. This picture is only possible because at that moment I opened my lens to the maximum at 1.4, and that's why you have a very short focal length, which means that you're going to have the sharp area where you focused and very quickly it's going to get blurry. And in the background you have this bright circle, which are artifacts called bokeh, which will be more visible when you will have a large aperture. Another example on this test photo where, in addition to having a large aperture, I decided to have a very high shutter speed as well. That is to say that for this precise example, it took a photo in 1.1250 of a second, which will allow me to have this snow in suspension without blurring on it. This is opposed to a very low shutter speed, for example 1 photo per second. It will allow to capture a lot of light, a lot of information, but be careful, if you have an object that moves, it will be blurred. The last notion you will need to know is the ISO. This is a measure of the sensitivity of the camera sensor. In fact, the higher your ISO value is, the more sensitive your sensor will be to light, which will allow you to take picture in low light condition. However, the higher the ISO is and the more noise and grain you will have in your picture. Now that you have all the basic theory, what you need to do is to find the composition that interests you. Why not put an object in the foreground to give you image depth? Why not play with the perspective of the object around you? What if there are some interesting light effects that you find? Photograph them. Maybe you like working with silhouette, portraits, or just landscape. Maybe you want to tell a story, like the hostility of a city after a snowstorm. All of this is up to you to determine. And the more picture you take, the more different outing you do, the more comfortable you will be with it. One more thing though, you can see in some of the picture that there is a kind of diffusion around the lights. That's something I have thanks to a filter I put on my lens. A diffusion filter by Tiffen. I like those images that are a bit diffused straight out of the camera without the need to edit them. On this trip I came across two people doing parkour, which I wanted to take picture of. And I realized at that moment that I didn't know my camera well enough. There are people run, so it goes relatively fast. And to be able to photograph them, I would have to take a burst of shot. And that's why I would like to come back on it. The more you know your camera, and the more you know your photographic desire, the more experience you will have and the more you will be able to make exactly the photo you want. Whatever the opportunities that comes to you are. So keep practicing your eyes for this exercise, it will help you in absolutely every artistic profession. And don't forget that beautiful photo is first and foremost a photo that you will like.